Hello everyone, welcome to my journey on learning Japanese and hopefully other things. Today marks my 3-month milestone of starting to learn Japanese again. I do have some limited experience learning Japanese from 10 years ago actually. However, at the time, I didn't really know how to study. I learned hiragana and katakana, and that's kind of how far I went. I learned some basic words and all that, but that's pretty much it. This time, I wanted to prove to myself that I can really stick to something, motivation or not, with discipline, because at the end of the day, it's really easy to fall into a comfort zone and routine and not really do anything or grow as a person. I also have some experience learning Mandarin Chinese. In university, while I was doing my prerequisites to get into my program, I was also taking Chinese classes on the side. And although I wasn't really doing much more than what was required to have a good grade in class, it really influenced my life in the sense that I'm half Chinese and I never really knew the language before that. And so I was able to travel to China for 2 months, and for the first time I was able to really connect with my family there and travel the country, speak to locals, and I remember seeing how people would appreciate that you would go out of your way to learn their language. And so I have a lot of respect for people that put the effort into learning a language. I'm definitely not that great in Chinese, especially since I haven't put in the hours. But if you're interested in learning more, I could make a video, so let me know. Now for the method I've been using to learn Japanese, it is very different from what I did for Chinese. Chinese was mostly textbooks and writing a lot. I would write these conversations and I'd know them by heart, and I really focused on speaking and writing. Whereas for Japanese, I would say that my focus is on understanding and to have more vocabulary than I did in Chinese. For that, I'm using the Immersion method. I think there's many names, but I'm not following a specific guide or anything. A lot of this is inspired by a YouTuber called Liva Kiwi, and basically he's been learning Japanese for 5-6 years, I believe. And most of this was through Anki, the 2K, 6K deck, and Immersion, so consuming a lot of Japanese content. And so that's also what I've been doing. I've been doing the 2K, 6K deck. I know some people do not recommend it, and I understand why. I think a lot of these words are not needed to get a good level of Japanese. But in my case, I kind of do want to learn all of these words as well as the kanji and all that. So for the 2K 6K deck, I'm just under 2,000 words. Out of those, around 1,300 are mature, and I've been taking 20 cards a day. Along that, I also started sentence mining. So I think a month in, I started doing that. Some people recommend to wait longer. Some people say to just skip the pre-made decks. I was already consuming content, and so I wanted to start sentence mining as soon as possible. And I'm not focusing on that. I've been taking 5 cards a day from my sentence mining deck and just adding cards whenever. I'm not trying to add like 5 cards a day or 20 cards a day, whatever. I just always have a buffer of cards to go through, and these cards have been the more enjoyable ones to rep because they come from content that I've watched. I can like recall the video where it was from. So including the immersion deck, I'm actually at 2,200 something cards. Out of those, around 1.5k are mature cards. I've been trying to keep Anki under an hour 30 minutes every day. So with 20 cards from the core 2k 6k deck and 5 cards from my immersion deck, it takes me around an hour to an hour 20 minutes. If I see that it starts taking too long, I might reduce the amount of cards I get from the core 2k 6k deck, especially after I get these first 2,000 mature cards. And so that should be around September 8, I believe. Now for grammar, I haven't been doing much of that. Before starting immersion learning, I was actually gonna do a similar thing I did for Chinese. So I bought Minna no Nihongo, the textbook, and I did a bit of that, but I kind of got bored of it, and I found the Moe Way, which recommended Kirdali's videos. Rest in peace. I've watched around, I want to say 13 videos of her grammar lectures, which are great, but honestly I was kind of falling asleep in the later videos. I'd like to maybe continue at some point, but for now I'm kind of putting it aside. As I said, my main learning method has been immersion, and most of that has been YouTube. I kind of have a YouTube addiction, so I've been trying to turn this into a good thing by trying to consume as much Japanese content as possible. But it's not always easy to find interesting things, especially when you're starting out and you don't really understand what's going on. So recently I've been watching a lot of like life vlogs and some comprehensible input. Now, comprehensible input is great because you can understand more and you can easily see your progression as you learn some vocabulary. Your understanding will go up. But I try not to just consume that because, well, they're not always interesting to watch for long periods of time. So I've been watching a lot of content that's meant for native Japanese speakers. I want to make a video at some point on some channels that I watch that I find interesting and maybe are good for others in the same boat. As for anime, I really like to immerse when I watch it and like be focused on the story and all that. So I haven't been really using it for the purpose of learning. I have restarted Sousou no Frieren and making flashcards, but I'm really only like 6 episodes in, so not much anime, honestly. I do plan on starting some slice of life animes, and I don't really mind as much if I don't get everything, and so I'll be doing that in the next months. But really I prefer to just watch YouTube and listen to like how real people talk. Now, for passive listening, I haven't been really doing much of it until recently. I was trying to keep most of my learning active, but the reality is I've been really busy, and some days I could only do Anki, and that doesn't feel great. So I've also started listening to some podcasts when I, for example, am walking my dog or driving. Now, when it comes to listening comprehension, I know it's difficult to quantify exactly what I understand, and of course it depends on what type of content I'm listening to. For example, if I'm listening to comprehensible input, I can easily understand 90% of what's being said, sometimes more if it's more on the beginner side. But for native level content, it really depends. For example, I've been listening to the Badonka Badonk podcast, I think, and I sometimes get lost in what they say, but also some other times I completely understand what is being told. And it's always satisfying when you understand like a wordplay that they're doing or something. I also listen to some booktubers. That has been the most difficult content. I would say that if they're talking specifically about a book, I can kind of get the gist of what they're saying, like the main theme of the book, but that's about it. I also mentioned earlier that I like to listen to some life vlogs, like what I eat in a day or living in Japan, things like that. And of course, these videos are meant for native speakers as well, but they're not too hard to understand. Some vocabulary might be unknown to me, but I'd say that I can understand at least 70% of what's being said in those videos. It's been really rewarding to go from understanding absolutely nothing to being able to consume these videos, which were basically not accessible to me before. But I can already tell that this comprehension would fall apart pretty quickly in a real conversation, because there's no consequence to not understanding parts of a video, whereas in conversation it is much more of a back and forth action. Missing or not understanding something that someone is telling you can lead to pretty awkward moments. Next would be reading. So I'm actually really interested in reading. I wasn't much of a reader growing up. Other than a few mangas, I never really read any books other than the ones I had to read for school. And even then, I wasn't really deep reading or anything. It's only something I picked up 3 to 4 years ago. I can definitely say that this reading habit has been a great addition to my life, and I plan on getting to a point where I can read anything that I want in Japanese as well. So at first I wasn't reading much, but I'm trying to get more into it. I started with Yotsubato, and I've read the 3 first volumes that I purchased previously in Japan, and that's been fun, especially because at first I started reading it pretty early on and I had to look up a lot of words. It didn't take long until I didn't really have to look up anything, and I would read 2 chapters here and there. I definitely don't have perfect comprehension, especially the way Yotsuba speaks. Can be a little confusing in hiragana only, and like these play of words, but it was fun overall. I would say though that what I'm more interested in reading is light novels. I did buy a physical copy of Majo no Takkyubin, which is Kiki's delivery service in English. Around the 2-month mark, I did spend a bit of time reading the first few pages, but as you can imagine, it is very time consuming and straining mentally. So I've been waiting until my vocabulary would get to a better level. Because I really wanted my experience with this book to be with the physical version, I picked up another book that's popular amongst Japanese language learners, which is Mata Onaji Yume o Miteita. And I've been reading this on my laptop using Yomitan to look up some words, and that's been going a lot more smoothly. I think the book itself is also shorter and a little more simple, so I'll be trying to finish this book first. As for speaking, a lot of people say not to focus on speaking, and that is exactly what I've been doing. I have not practiced speaking at all, but I have to say that I do want to start practicing very soon, because I'm actually actively looking to move to Japan. Now, I was trying to keep this low-key, didn't really want to make this video about that, but the reality is, because I'm not going as an English teacher, it would be preferable for me to be able to speak. Anyways, I do plan on making videos on that in the future. I don't know exactly how long it's gonna take, but it's happening, and I will document the process and share with you guys my experience. 日本語の話すことを勉強していないとばっかり言っていたけれどが、ちょっとだけ話してみたいと思います。And that's about as much as I'm gonna say. My speaking practice is really from like repeating things in my head and sometimes talking to myself, like short bursts of things that just come up in my head. Like I'm gonna be taking a shower and I don't know, saying something randomly. I don't think that these things that I hear always make sense, and they might be part of the process of my brain assimilating this language. It's hard to explain, but I am dreaming somewhat in Japanese sometimes. I think this is similar to what I experience in Chinese. At some point, you kind of start thinking in that language, and I'm definitely nowhere as comfortable in speaking in Japanese. Actually, I'm very uncomfortable, but that's why I want to take the first step and be able to at least say simple things. And finally, for writing, I am also not doing that at all. I did, like I said, learn hiragana and katakana previously, and I did write them physically, and so I'm very confident in writing them, and I can write some kanji. Also, I have experience writing Chinese characters, so if I see the kanji, I can write it down. But I'm not interested in learning all of the combinations by heart. Actually, when I read kanji, for example, I don't pay particular attention to which radicals are used. I see it more as a whole. And it's only when I start confusing some kanji with other kanji that I start paying attention to the radicals. For example, erai and chigau, or matsu and motsu. As a way to stay accountable, and also kind of as a way to gamify the experience, I've been tracking the hours that I put into learning Japanese. I have 253 hours of learning. Out of that, 103 is for flashcards, 117 is for listening in general. Out of that, only 82.3 is for active, the rest is passive listening, and I have 14 hours of grammar study, 18 hours of reading, and only 1 hour of output. 30 minutes of that was basically a conversation with a Japanese coworker, and 30 minutes for written practice. For future goals, the main thing is to stay consistent. I want to keep doing this for many years to come. My next milestone, I guess, is to reach 2K mature cards on the core 2K 6K deck. As I said, that's probably going to be in September. I plan on making more video updates, probably not monthly, because it's really in terms of a few months that I think we'll be able to see a difference. By the way, I realize that I sound like I'm completely out of energy. I mean, that might be true. I've been filming this for many hours now, and my AC is turned off for the sound quality. I'll try to get more used to this, and I guess things might be easier in the future. For the next few months, I'd like to increase the time I spend studying. I want it to be closer to 100 hours per month, and I guess I'm not that far off. But also, these past 3 months have also been the busiest I've been at work, so life gets in the way. Reading is definitely something I want to do more. I do want to finish that novel I started, and possibly read other things. I do want to start speaking. I might go to some meetings, and of course I'll keep listening to YouTube videos, try to increase my comprehension there. I'd like to say also that if you're learning like me, don't worry too much about how you're doing it. I think what's really important is that you're putting in the hours. It's really easy to fall into this rabbit hole of watching videos on how you should study and what I'm doing different that is working for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts, comments, or you'd like to share that you're also on the journey of improvement, learning the language, please let me know in the comment section below. I will read every single message. And on that note, bye-bye.